Hello everyone, and welcome to this video. I'm your host 2B, and this is Ker Nethalas Into the Midnight Throne. And I thought it would be pretty cool to play this game on the channel, to introduce you to the game, to set up a character, especially if you're a new player. I would absolutely love to do that, and to explain a little bit about the game, the rules, everything that's within the book, and yeah, tell a little bit about the thing. Um, in this first video, I mostly think that this will be an introduction to the game. I will be talking about the book a little bit, meander a little bit on the left and the right. I don't think I will be creating a character yet, but I'll talk a little bit about the book itself. So the game is designed by Alex T from Black Oath Games or Black Oath Entertainment, and the game is quite a large book with a lot of descriptions, a lot of ideas in it. It's quite impressive to see someone put together a game of this extent. I think has cost about years to design to really get everything right and sharpened and make it all work. On the other hand, I do have to say I'm a technical manual writer, and from a technical perspective, some of the things in this book are explained in a quite a complicated manner, which you will fumble with the rules quite a lot, especially when you're unable to pick up on the smaller things. This game can become quite complex, and I'll say that only by this sheet. Don't be intimidated. This is not the only one. This is combat. It is quite a matrix or quite a diagram to go into. But don't worry, I'll explain as much as I can to the best of my ability when we get to play. When we start off the game, we have this little, very cute little story. Before you even open your eyes, a wave of nauseating stench hits you, immediately causing you to heave, the bitter taste of bile in your mouth. The whole body hurts, and you can feel an intense burning around your neck. With some hesitation, you manage to sit up from the pile of soft refuse you appear to be lying on. To your horror, you quickly discover that this is not garbage, but a pile of decaying human corpses. Bloated faces and sunken eyes stare blankly at you, illuminated by a single ray of sunlight coming from high above your head. A flood of memories comes rushing back. You were executed. And that is how you enter the Midnight Throne. You are, well, not dead yet. But yeah, as it says in the tin right here, single player co-op dungeon survival game. This game doesn't have a goal, nothing more than to survive the Midnight Throne. In character creation, there's a few things which are a bit they're quite straightforward with them, the health, the toughness, ether, the resistances. You get a few rolls, you write them on your character sheet. It's fairly easy. If you're a beginner player, you will notice that you get a few skills, especially if you have played a game like this before. You get to understand that very simply. However, once you've filled in all those numbers, there are a few things which are, even to me, unknown what you do with them, as if you use all these values or the skill points and you insert them into your skills, not everything will have a value for some reason. I don't know why. And you also notice there's a 10, 10, 10, 20, 10, and here's a 20 as well. I have no exact idea why those values are there. Are they basic? Are they standard? I do not know. From my personal perspective, I've said if you want to play like a normal mode, you do add those values. So let's just say you choose a skill 30 skill points and you say, oh, I want my acrobats to be 30. You add plus 10 and you start off with 40. That's like the normal difficulty. This is just a home rule I did. If you want to play harder, you don't add those values. Well, you're creating your character. It's something that I came up with. I found it interesting, but I have no idea why those values are there. Furthermore, as I mentioned, I'm a technical manual writer. I don't really like the structure or the writing of this book at times, especially in the rules or the way how it's built. After masteries, we immediately jump into combat, where I would say you jump into exploration. So, yeah, I rather would read something about a tutorial. How do I draw on a map, and how do I get to explore, and how do I get to an encounter? Which would have been a little bit nicer for the game, because tossing a player immediately into a very heavy combat system is quite mind-boggling. But don't worry too much about it. There are many videos like these or others that will help you along, and if you keep to it, you'll eventually understand the small niches of the combat system, which I have to say is a really interesting and cool system to play around with, especially when you learn the ropes or the bigger, smaller ideas of it. Um, if we take a look at masteries, there are 20 different masteries in the game. I will pick two of them, and if you choose the same, then those masteries will help you along with the game. I'll talk about them a little bit later. One of the things which I find a little bit difficult in the game is that it says here masteries. I assume that they're also classes, but it doesn't exactly tell you what a mastery is up until you scroll all the way to the back in the book, and there is a neat little table, the random mastery table, and I would prefer that one to be all the way up here. That would be so unbelievably nice to have that particular table right here. Then I immediately understand that an Abysmal Reaver is one of the masteries you mean. Another thing is at the bottom here it says 2 ability points, and when I flip over to one of the the masteries, what is exactly an ability here? Is this page an ability with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or is it tier 1 or a tier 2 ability? It's not exactly clear what an ability is, and it is also not exactly clear that you need 2 masteries at the start of the game, and for each you choose the very first tier. As a tier is a ability. That's the kind of writing that this book has. You need to infer a decent amount of things. So that is that this is kind of difficult at times. Another thing, it says here an example. The Galilea has dark vision ability. Trust me, if you will search around, you will not find a dark vision ability. You will eventually find the Umbral Phantom has dark sight. Some of the wording in the book in examples kind of miss the target, but I'm not pissing on the game at all. It's just a pointer to make you pay attention to it as you are reading the book. You go through it, pay attention to this point, and you'll do a whole lot better. You choose a class and you write down this passive ability, and this is also an ability that you gain. You can always gain the first tier, and then you choose a second mastery. You gain. You write down a name. You have the passive ability, and you take the first tier as well. That is what is described right here. Furthermore, you can do a d6 roll. I find this interesting. It doesn't have really an effect on your character, but you can roll a d6 and you have a 4, and you're trained in the Hall of Whispers, which is an interesting little background story where you came from. It adds a little bit to the flavor of your own character or the backstory of the game. There's quite a lot of them. There are 20 classes times 6 different training locations, so there's a pretty decent amount of text you can read. 120 different training locations with all kinds of descriptions, which is a nice background piece to have. Furthermore, we have your character progression, which tells us a few perks and how we can level up our character. And about the structure in the game after this, I really wished, and this is something that you'll notice as well, that if we flip this page, we would end up in Stepping into the Darkness. This is pretty much a Very simple, very light tutorial on how to play the game, and it gives you a basic piece to work with. It's not very strong in its explanation, but at least it gives you a few things to think about and a few things to focus on instead of the enormous scale of the book itself. So, if you want to play your own tutorial or you want to play your own game, scroll to the back of the book. Another thing is right after that, we step into the rules. One of the things that happens is we immediately jump into combat. And I rather would have preferred it if we step into exploration actually and then into combat. It's just a structural thing. It's nothing more than in the game we also start right with exploration and then we get an encounter. That's the kind of structure that can be a little bit fumbling with the rules because you have to read everything about combat to get to understand this, and eventually like, okay, this is a lot of rules. And again, as I showed you, there's a huge matrix behind it as well, which is just a lot of work to get through. Where are you? Yeah. It's just a lot of work to get through all of this to understand it right from the get-go. I wouldn't put a player to that, but it's a choice that don't worry about it too much. As long as you know there's a tutorial in the book, you can start off with the chapter exploration, and from that point you'll learn a little bit more about the game. And as I said, I'll learn you how to play the game as well. We'll set up a character and begin with that one. Let's see, there's another part which I had. Just a pointer again. And that's the last one. After that, I'll go through the rest of the book. The last pointer is here in personal goals. Your character can have 2 personal goals active at a time, 2 different ones. And it says here, we strongly recommend that you choose the Overseer Overthrown so you can get your 3rd mastery. And if you flip over, we see here, Overseer Overthrown, defeat an Overseer, you obtain an amulet. It doesn't say you gain your 3rd mastery. So this is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. You sometimes miss a few pointers or some information, so keep an eye on this. Nevertheless, once we get into the game, we get into combat with the game. We can roll for, we get an initiative, we have a surprise attack, we roll for our initiative, we get a whole bunch of extras on our combat. There's a whole lot of play with critical strikes, fumbles. There's a special table that tells us about our defensive moves, about how the enemy attacks, and this is highly fascinating. The way how combat works and the way how this game teases you into believing or you can defeat this creature, and eventually you're completely angled, flanked, dumped into and entangled. You're dazed, you are on fire, you're cut to pieces, and there's a magical effect on you, and you're pretty much dying in absolutely no seconds at all. Many people say that this game is extremely difficult, or that it is very difficult, very hard. Funny enough, with my very first 3 characters, I hadn't had that problem at all, other than I had to get through the rules. I understood most of it, what I did, but I didn't have an issue with the game thus far. Up until recently, I've started to create a few different characters just to try out, and I have to say, some classes are way weaker than others. So from when we set up a character, I will pick 2 classes which are really good for a starting character, so you can keep on playing the game for a while, and so on. We shall play the game. We'll see. Anything else about combat? We'll skip over. We'll get to combat. There's an interesting system about the rod. I've seen in the book that it is barely in the game, for except an overseer that you have to defeat, which is one of the goals of your dungeon, so to speak. So I'm here with one of my characters in this dungeon, and I have to defeat a gore hoof. Um, you go through the entire dungeon, and once you have hit a particular point via dice, I think they call it an oracle system. No, it's not an oracle system. It's nothing more than a level up system that you start with a d12. If it rolls a 2 or a 1, it becomes a d10, then a d8, then a d6, and eventually if you have a d4, and if you roll a 1 and a 2 on it, you found the location where you will find the overseer, and you can initiate an attack on the overseer, try and defeat it, and the faster you get to that point, the better it is for your character, the more you survived, and the more you'll um, be able to thrive in Ker Nethalas. Yeah, and one of those overseers has an ability to cause rot, and this is a very niche kind of little thing in the game, as with many of the rules, so to speak. They pop up at very infinitesimal small percentages, but when they do, they really change your game enormously much. It is pretty much the same as finding a legendary weapon. When you find it, it changes your game significantly, but also a legendary problem can completely change the outcome of your game. And that is the fun part about that game, about this game. A future me here. So we have 100 tiles with the first 20 are corridors and the rest are rooms. And that's pretty much everything that is explained in the book. It doesn't tell us what doors are or what exactly is the area on which your character moves, or even how your character moves from tile to tile. Am I allowed to do 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps? It doesn't really tell us exactly. Also, it doesn't show a diagram of how everything is drawn, or giving you a few examples. So you have to infer here in a decent amount of things that there are corridors, there are rooms. That is something we understand. But then we have to take a look at the illustrations. We see that there are these um, white little blocks, and the game just doesn't tell us that those are doors. On the other hand, if you take a very close look at those 100 diagrams, and you take a look at them, is the dark area a wall, or is the light area a wall? And that is something that a diagram isn't showing us. Of course, if we infer this really tightly, then the black area is where we walk, the white area is everything that is locked away, and the white blocks that you see there, those are doors. Page which I find extremely complicated in its method of writing, and that is that the doors and the containers, I do understand this, don't worry, but the traps, how this is built up with, I think, 7 different if statements based on one action. This is a complicated piece. I have figured it out, but it is, when you read it, it is really, you have this action and you have an if, you have this action, you have an if, you have this action, you have an if, you have this action, you have an if. It is really this breaking down of the entire system, and you have to go through this once or twice. I would suggest that if this is written down again, write this in pieces, write this in compartmentalized pieces, like a condition, for instance. We have conditions, and what is a condition A, condition B, condition C, condition D? Do it over here. We have this particular action, and it can lead to the action A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A. After A, you do B, after B, you do C, and then the trap is done. Or if you did B, then you need to do D, and after D, you do E, and then you're done. Would have helped a lot with this particular structure. What I like about the system, though, is that you have a lot of leeway in it. For instance, if you find this is a door, and there is a lock on the door, you can leave it alone, of course, but if you have removed the lock, you'll eventually roll some dice, and hey, there is now a trap. You discovered a trap on the door. You can leave the door alone. You don't have to open it for as long as you perceive the trap. And this is something which I like about it, which is very simple. It's in any D&D game. But what I like about it, you can also go through the door and say, I'm going to trigger it. um, which is a fun one. And another fun component about the traps is you trigger it and you have to do a dodge check or an acrobatics or an athletics check to evade it. And there's all kinds of things that happen to you, from piercing to bludgeoning to being almost sliced in half. Number six, if you roll six, trust me, you'll die. It is 1d20 of slashing damage. And that is one thing, by the way. You might think, whoa, 1d20 of damage, it's 7 damage. Don't worry too much about it. Everything will go through a so called damage table. So a d20 has just a very high chance of rolling very high on this particular table, and it will be converted to an X amount of damage. So if I roll 19, then I'll deal 4 damage. Then the trap will deal 4 damage to me. That is the way how the game calculates all of its damages. So keep that one in mind. Don't say, oh, I rolled a d10, so I rolled a 7, so now I lose 7 health. That is not what the game does. Furthermore, anything else? Tension die, this is really interesting. The more times you go through the dungeon, then you'll eventually have some dice that will go down, or perhaps it triggers in the game and you have a growing darkness. And growing darkness can cause enemies to increase in combat skill, or there's just something bad happening, that you suddenly feel a little sick and you have more poison damage, or monsters have a certain type of resistance, you lose sanity. There's all kinds of crazy stuff that can happen. There are also a few positive things in here, such as there's another overseer influence roll made, but each creature you defeat, you get plus 10 experience, which is really nice if that happens and you can cope with it. If you are in a position where you're almost bleeding to death and you can't take it anymore, you can take a breather or you can set up camp. And in camp, there is a few things you can do, such as attune to magical items. There's a magical creation system in here, which is really cool, where you can make rings, where if you found the magical item, you haven't defined it yet. And if you have an attunement crystal, you can define the item by using it in camp, and you can get all kinds of magical properties. And if you have an epic item, you have 3 magical properties on that particular item, which is a lot of fun to see. I've not seen this very often in games, but it is really thrilling that when you have a magical item, only if it has just one property, it's a cool property. It's something nice to use. I can remember I had a few boots which, what was it again? Oh, fine. Boots. You had a free reaction per round. That was an interesting one. And the ignore an effect of a fumble once. So a fumble is pretty much your critical failure during a fight, but you can ignore it once per camp. It's a very nice trait to have it in the game. You have an advantage on stealth checks. It's really, really nice to have this in the game. And the magical properties are just really cool. Furthermore, in camp, you can do cooking, crafting, making lamp oils, torches, heal your conditions, rest, swap mastery amulets, and just some other benefits. And that is pretty much it. It is fairly simple, and the only thing that you need to pay attention to. So future me here about resting and setting up camp. Later in the video, I do discover a little bit better how the system works. Since I'm recording the video, I realized I did something wrong here or didn't explain it all too well. So you roll a d20. If it is plus 10, you have no encounter, and in camp you eat 1 ration, meaning you lose no benefits. That's the first option here. The second outcome of this roll is you roll your d20. It's minus 10, so you do have an encounter, and this causes 50% loss of all the benefits. The third option is that you roll your d20. You do not have an encounter, but you don't eat a ration, so you have 50% loss of your benefits. And the last option, and this is the worst one in this little piece of text, is that if you roll your d20, you have an encounter, and you get into camp eventually by defeating the encounter. You get into camp and you do not eat a ration, then it is a loss of a total of 75%. And that is due to you have the encounter that says reduce all the benefits of camping by half, rounding down or rounded down. And after that, we have the setting up camp, consumes one ration, and this is also the benefits of camping are halved, rounded down. The word benefits is to be underscored or printed in bold here. So if we go to page 110, we see the word benefits, a little paragraph with the regain all your toughness, your health, your sanity, and exhaustion. So at first I really didn't understand what this was all about, and I recently discovered that the word benefits is really, really important here. Another thing, which is to note here, that if you set up camp for the very first time, then you do not have any rations. Maybe you found it on your first encounter in the very first room after defeating your very first encounter, but that is extremely unlikely. I think it's a little unfair that when you set up your very first camp that it consumes one ration and all your camping benefits are halved right away. So I would say set up your camp. If you're able to make rations, eat one, and then nothing is halved. The combat encounters. This is the beef, the meat of the game. This is a serious amount of monsters, like 40 different encounters. All of them feel just a hint different about them, and the names and the descriptions that they have are really cool. It's quite verbose at times, a bit lengthy, but it really paints the world in how twisted and how terrible and how agonizingly nightmarish these creatures all can be. You do have to pay attention to what you're doing. It's quite easy to screw something up during combat, but don't worry too much. The if you play your first character, I would tell you this: play your game. If you encounter something new in a rule, implement it at that point. Don't think like, oh, I did everything wrong. No, just keep playing with the new rule in mind and keep doing that each time over and over again. Anything else? I have to say that the monsters will just have a very interesting method of how they work, but we'll get to that in combat. I like the action tables here, where this death sage will roll a d6, and we as a player roll a d6 as our attack. Now I have attack 1, it goes into the table which I previously shown, but the monsters will actually roll a4 on their table, and now he does a crippling curse, which is a magical attack. And the death sage points a bony finger at a target, unleashing a curse that weakens their movements. The target must succeed on an endurance check or gain disadvantage on combat-related checks for 1d4 rounds. So it's a crippling curse. It is indeed a curse. You need to remember that in the game it happens, but a disadvantage on your rolls is pretty terrible. And it can happen again, and the monster can do it again if the monster is that good at it. And yes, it is, as you can read here, it's a horrifying monster. So yeah, they're interesting to fight. Some of them are really difficult. Some of them are a bit of a head scratcher. I think what was it again? Come on. The Bloodstalker. I find the Bloodstalker one of the strangest enemies in the game. It has like 1 health. Yeah, Bloodstalker, 1 health. I know it from the top of my mind. And has 2 armor on its chest, but you just kill it in 1 shot and that's it. For the exception that if this thing remains alive for too long, it will start to drain your health enormously quickly, but usually that doesn't happen. Usually. Quite usually. After we have had all our encounters, we have the overseers, and this is another piece of meat in the game, so to speak. The overseers are boss fights, and they're the big guys in the game. It is very Dark Souls-esque, I would say. It is taking quite a lot of inspiration from it, I would say, but these are like big guys, big monsters. They also have a huge table they fight with. They got pretty crazy stats. They have multiple actions per combat round, and they can completely and utterly destroy you, or they don't do as much, kind of depending on what they roll and who you are as a character. I, for instance, had the Gore Hoof, this guy, which I managed on my very first character to disable many of its body parts, which converted its combat skill, which is 45 right now, to a total of 5 almost every round. And this caused this enemy to not be able to hit me as much, and the only thing it was just doing, just standing there lying on the ground, not doing as much as I tried to hit it and get its health down, for the exception that he kept rolling a 4 all the time and kept healing little bits of health, or I was frightened again, or he did some slashing damage, but it was like meh. It took a very long time to defeat it though, but it was the very first overseer that I defeated um, on my first game as well. But it took a very long time. And eventually, getting their combat skill down worked unbelievably well. And they are quite interesting to fight. I've already had 4 different overseers, and each one of them is completely different than the other one. You have to pay an excruciatingly amount of attention to what they do, and trust me, you will make mistakes. I will make mistakes during my recording as well, so just pay attention to it. We'll get through it, and you'll eventually see what will happen. The best part of the book: spoils and loot. Everybody kind of feels like this guy appreciating the gold and the gems and all the kleptomania inside you comes out quite easily, as there is lots of coin and lots of loot to be had in this game. Starting off with a huge list of weapons. Is there anything else about this, by the way? Just a huge list of weapons, all kinds of different armor. This is a bit difficult with armor in the sense that it reduces your maneuverability and perception. You really have to be careful wearing high class armor, or it will completely destroy your character, as maneuverability is a effect on your character that reduces your acrobatics, dodge, and stealth by this value. For instance, if you have soft leather, it reduces it by 15 points. 15 points, minus 15 acrobatics, minus 15 dodge, minus 15 stealth. That's a lot of reduction right there. It's 45 points lost just because you have 1 defense across your entire body. It's quite serious. Other items, there's some common stuff such as your backpack, bandages, bedrolls, flares, lamp oil, lockpicks, pouches, rations, ritual ingredients, which is for a special class, thieves' tools, that sort of stuff is the common stuff. There's not a whole lot here. I kind of expected to have a little bit more, but this feels to me a little underwhelming. But yeah, okay, it works for the game. You don't need to overwhelm the player with so many items, but I would love to see a little bit more. Um, Fragments. This is a really interesting item on the list. This is pretty much a piece of a magical component, and you can use it with all kinds of strange ideas. It's nothing more than a remnant of magic left over by something that was broken. It still contains a little bit of energy, and you can use it once to, for instance, raise a skeleton, which some of my characters have had. I was a sneaky person, and I raised a skeleton, and I pretty much used the skeleton to do my bidding all the time. It was fun. Many fragments. There are gems and jewelry just for cash. Lore books. I haven't found a lore book, so I'm not going to talk about this. I assume it's a lot of background story. Potions. A very small list, I would say, but I think it's a focused list, so it will do just fine. And in the back of the book, we have all the random lists that are telling you how to set up a thing, how to set up a magical item, how to set up armor, roll for a weapon. So if you ever find anything, you need to be in the back of the book. And last but not least, we have our beautiful relics. And relics are 20 different items, and I've already found a few in my 4 games that I played. These are powerful items which can completely change your game. Um, I've had a some sort of a fist, but it was again the Void Clasp Gauntlets, which deals a minimum of 1 damage, and I can spend a reaction to turn your opponent's attack against them, which is really nice, leaving you unharmed. I think I also sold one to the trader. Now that we're here anyway, I sold a relic to a trader, which gives you 1,000 credits, and 1,000 credits allows you to buy an insane amount of items. So it was an epic item which I, as a character, couldn't use as much. It had this one, the Mindward Elixir. It gave me 1d4 sanity permanent, which my character was really good with sanity. I was like, I don't really need it. I'm gonna sell it to this guy, which I then found. And from him, I bought many attunement crystals to define all the magical items that I had. I was carrying 4 different magical boots. And yeah, I bought pouches and backpacks and tools and whatever. And it was a very happy moment, very complicated as well to put everything together. It took a lot of time. Um, Once I was finished, I entered the room and I was killed. I was seriously working on 2 hours on the trader and getting everything attuned and selling and figuring everything out. And I walked into the first room, and that's where I died. It's interesting how the game can completely turn. I was perfectly healthy, nothing was wrong with my character. I could do everything I wanted, and I just died so fast. Which you might say that's brutal, but that is Ker Nethalas into the Midnight Throne. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. I am your host, 2B, and in the next video, we'll set up a character and play the game.